Welcome back, wanderers of the shadows, to Enter the Dark, the place where we peel back the veil of humanity's twisted souls. I am your guide as ever through the abyss, Jan, and with me as always is Les. How are you, Les?
All good, mate. All good.
Nice of you to show up.
I know, yeah. After that,
this time.
yeah.
For a quick overview of this, we were recording this last week, but Les forgot. So he got drunk the night before and it was a heavy one and he completely blacked out and forgot we were recording.
Literally, proper blackout.
Terrible person. But yeah, anyway, tonight, guys, we are stepping into the dusty, sun-baked streets of a tiny Missouri town where fear wasn't just in the air, but it owned the place. Now, picture this. It's the late 70s, early 80s in Skidmore, which is the population's barely 400. Now, if you're thinking, Skidmore, I've heard of that before. Where have I heard of it? If you go back to our Bobby Joe Stinnett video, that took place in Skidmore. So this tells you what it is. Cornfields are everywhere and, people are just waving at each other. Everyone knows everybody. But one man's business there was terrorized. And he made sure that the whole town paid the price. And his name was Ken Rex McElroy. Now, he was a town bully who turned intimidation into an art form until the town finally said, enough is enough. Buckle up. We're diving deep into the facts, the forensics, the fear, the forgotten victims of Skidmore's living nightmare. But remember, in the dark, truth is stranger. And also strange is the people who actually like to support us by going on to Patreon and helping us. And those people are Amanda Weaver, Liv Templeton, Krista Francis, Verena Schmid, Cookie, Yulata Pang, Becky Louise, Jules Henderson, Casey the Cannibal, and Amanda Champagne. You are all superstars in our eyes. Now, if you do want to support us, the easiest way to do it is just click subscribe on the YouTube channel, like the video, leave a comment for us. But if you do want to chuck a couple of shekels our way, you can go to www.patreon.com/enter the dark, anything from $1 to $50, or just join for free and just support us and just let us know if you like us or not. Right then, so let's rewind the clock, Les, because every monster like McElroy doesn't just pop out fully formed. It's brewed from a messed up childhood stew. He was born Ken Rex McElroy on June 16th, 1934 in Skidmore, Missouri. He was the 15th of 16th kids. That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot. And you're not even the youngest. What a shit position to be in.
Parents Tony and Mabel were migrant tenant farmers, and they were literally dirt poor, and they bounced between Kansas and the Ozarks before settling outside the town. They had a hard life. There was frequent moves, and there was probably more beatings and yellings than hugs and saying I love you. Now, Ken dropped out of school at 15 and he never learned to read or write properly, but he's sharp in different ways, Les. The kind of worst ways. Hunting, fast driving, backroads navigation. Now, they were perfect skills for rustling hogs and cattle under moonlight. Now, around early 1948, he's already stealing small stuff and dipping into bigger crimes. The neighbours probably looked at him and were like, yeah, this kid's going to be trouble. But in 1954, working in construction in Colorado for his sister's husband, a steel beam cracks his skull and he suffers from lifelong migraines, chronic pain, and some say it scrambled his brain. It turned a petty crook into a volatile beast. Now, some people say he was always horrible and rotten, and that just set it up. Now, those workers were just trying to build something useful, but they accidentally built the ultimate wrecking ball of a man. If only they stuck to hard hats and union brakes, Skidmore might have been spared decades of hell, Les.
Was he a bit of a unit? Was he a bit of a, bit tasty?
I think he was just more of a dickhead.
Yeah.
Like a massive dickhead. But by 1952, he married his first wife, Olita, and she was 18. And they moved west, but after the injury, he moved back to Missouri, and he got divorced in 1958. Now, that year, he shoots his second wife, Sharon, in an argument. How does he get away with that? He's clearly shot her. How would he get away with it? He married her to dodge the charges via spousal privilege. They had 5 kids together: Jerome, Tammy Sue, Debbie, Tina, and Teresa, all between 1959 and 65. But if you're thinking, well, he may have shot her, but at least he married her and, stuck with it. No, he didn't. Fidelity is not in this man's dictionary. In 1959, he knocked up 15-year-old Donna, and in 1960, he moved his girlfriend Sally to his house with Sharon still there. Now, he had 4 more kids with her, and then he booted her out, and the kids were sent out for adoption. Now, in 1964, he dumped Sharon for Alice Wood and had another 3 kids. And then in 1971, he had another kid with Marcia Scurrit. You might be thinking, oh, this guy's just a bit of a dick. He likes to put it about, have kids, he's not a very good dad. This is how horrible this man is. Around about 1969 to 1970, he was 35, and he met Trina McLeod, who was 12 years old. He brutally raped her, beat her, scarred her for life. When she was 14, he got her pregnant. So he went to her parents and said, I'm going to marry her, because obviously she can't testify against him for rape and all this stuff if they get married. Her parents literally said, obviously, no, you're not marrying our daughter. So in a rational way, what would you do is go back and say, look, these are my reasons. Let's hash this out and come to an understanding. But this man is not reasonable. So on June the 12th, 1973, he burned their house to the ground. And then, when he went to see him again, the family dog was barking at him, so he shot the dog with a shotgun, right in front of him. So, dog brains are all over the porch, no more barking, the house is burnt down. So her parents went, yeah, okay then, you can marry her. On the October the 20th, 1974, he married Trina to kill the statutory rape charge and had 3 more kids with her. Back then, Missouri courtship sometimes meant arsoning for animal cruelty as foreplay, Les. But Ken collected wives and kids like stray cats, except he neutered the competition with fire and lead. He had at least 17 kids. Many were done through force. Deadbeat Dad doesn't cover this. This was like a fucking predatory production line. What made his brain tick or, sort of explode in that? Many people say he's got textbook antisocial personality disorder because he had no remorse, impulsivity, and aggression. He had over 36 felonies and never admitted guilt to any of them. Now, it could be poverty, abuse, massive family chaos. His mum and dad did like dishing out violence, like, they were chores to people. But is it sort of like the abused becomes an abuser? Or the brain injury that he had, like we all know, many serial killers like Bundy and stuff. Fred West, they all had traumatic brain injury. His frontal lobe dented and rage went unchecked. With him being a raging alcoholic, that sort of exacerbated it. He had low agreeableness because everyone was a threat to him. Highly neurotic, which just caused his anger. Thrill-seeking extroversion with zero warmth. And he was also really paranoid. But everything he did was justified. He said, if you crossed him, he would shoot you or set fire to your house. His brain was kind of like a really bad batch of moonshine. It's potent, poisonous, but no one wants to drink it really, do they? Over 2 decades, he did rack up accusations of the 36 felonies. It was assault, child molestation, statutory rape, arson, animal cruelty, burglary, and endless livestock thefts. He was rustling pigs and cattle like it was a hobby that paid the bills, and it did. That's how he paid the bills with it. He was indicted 21 times and convicted only once because of his lawyer, Richard G. McFadden, who delayed trials, filed endless appeals, and turned intimidation into a legal strategy. McFadden represented him in over 20 cases and gained him off every time except the final one, which used tactics like fabricated alibis and due repressor that bordered on criminal itself. He would basically terrorise these people to break their spirit before they could testify. Witnesses who would speak up were finding parked outside their homes in the dead of night, engine idling, headlights piercing the darkness, and he'd make threats by drive-by, like drive-by threats. He'd go past the window really slowly, looking in, holding a gun. He'd make harassing phone calls in the early hours with anonymous voices whispering promises of pain and death, and then he would just go outside the house sometimes under the cover of darkness. I'd just start firing a shotgun into the air to wake them up and let them know. But he was never without firearms. He always had pistols, rifles in the truck, shotguns carried around, and he would use them without a second thought. He would literally, if you walked him, banged into him into the street, didn't say sorry, he'd probably just turn around and shoot you in the back. So this guy's
what's like the sheriff's department doing, like, while he's being cock of the fucking walk?
Well, to be honest, they don't not do much because they're arresting him, trying to get him to trial, but then he's intimidating everyone, he's getting off, and they're just sort of like, what the fuck can we do? Literally. And if he's threatening to kill their families or stuff like that, they're going to be like, well, just back off a bit from him.
Yeah, like he is a bit of a maniac.
But one farmer accused him of theft. So Ken went up to him and smashed him in his face with the butt of a rifle, and he pointed his shotguns at law enforcement, even aiming at their families to send a message to him: back off or I'm going to kill you. So the town lived in constant dread. Now, when he came into Skidmore in his red Chevy Silverado, like the streets cleared out, like, you know, like in westerns when somebody comes in and everybody just goes
into the saloon.
Yeah, they would do it. They'd do that because they don't know what he's going to do, if he's going to shoot someone or anything. He committed about 3 or 4 crimes a year, like, and blended what passed for legitimate work. Like, he'd lease farmland and deal in hunting dogs, like he'd breed hunting dogs and then use the dogs as alibis or distractions while he stole livestock. So he'd be like, oh, my dog's got out. So people were rounding up the dogs and he'd steal all the livestock. There was a farmer called Romain Henry, and he caught Ken shooting on his property and went up to him and was like, Luke, what the fuck are you doing? You can't do that. So Ken just turned around and shot him twice in the stomach. He crawled for help, this guy did, with his stomach hanging out, and managed to survive. And Ken was charged with assault with intent to kill. But he walked free, because after alibis from raccoon hunters appeared out of nowhere, jurors were stalked and intimidated, and rumours swirled.
Serious?
Yeah, raccoon hunting. What they do, that you go out with a big torch, yeah, and when you see one, you shine it in the really brightly in the raccoon's face, so it goes like that, and this someone else just shoots him. I saw that on some program, like
Alaska Survival Alaska or something.
Yeah, but apparently it's illegal to do that.
They made good furs, don't they? They used to make hats out of them and shit, like Davy Crockett and all that.
Yeah, man. Also, just to make sure that he wasn't going to get convicted, he burnt down the judge's barn. He's got like these dodgy alibis. Jurors are being stalked and intimidated, and the judge's barn got burnt down. What finally kicked off everything and made Skidmore say, well, no, fuck this guy. On April 25th, 1980, one of Ken's kids was accused of stealing candy from Ernest and Lois Bowenkamp's grocery store. Now, it's petty theft. Ken went mental at him. He issued threats against the Bowenkamps, promised to burn their store down and kill them if they pressed charges, and the Bowenkamps filed a legal proceeding anyway, and Ken began stalking them relentlessly and doing parking outside the house, going past, doing drive-bys, holding a gun, everything like that. And on July the 8th, 1980, at the store's loading dock, he confronted 70-year-old Bo in a heated argument that ended with Ken grabbing a shotgun and shooting him in the neck. Now, this is like buckshot shotgun. So it's like, and basically it ripped through the flesh and arteries and it was spraying out all over him there. But he had emergency surgery and managed to survive. Now, Richard Stratton arrested Ken near the Kansas border and the preliminary trial kicked off on August 18th, 1980. Now, Ken was saying it was self-defense. He was saying Bo come at him with a knife, but he didn't. But the case kept going on and on and on. And on June 25th, 1981, he was convicted of second-degree assault and sentenced to 2 years, but he was released on a $40,000 bail pending appeal. Now, he's out there free, so instead of sitting back and saying, like, okay, I'll take it easy, he just went outside the Bowenkamp's house, doing daily vigils, staring at him with a gun, threatening anyone who supported him, including the town minister who visited Bo in the hospital. So he's going up to the minister and threatening him, saying, how dare you go visit this man in hospital who I shot in the neck. Round about June 29th or 30th, 1981, Ken went into the D&G Tavern wielding an illegal M1 Garland rifle with a fixed bayonet, ranting about killing Bo and thrusting the blade for emphasis. I'll gut him like a fish, he said. It was a blatant bond violation and it led to a revocation of hearing being ordered, but it was delayed until early July, frustrating the community to breaking point. Now, these people are fucking sick of this guy. He's just shot our friend Bo. You know, he works in his store. You know, he's a nice guy. There's only 400 people in this town, so everyone goes there. You know, he's threatening people and everything. So on July the 10th, 1981, about 60 townspeople gathered at the American Legion Hall with Sheriff Dan Estes to discuss protection from McElroy. And then they come up with ideas like neighbourhood watch, anything to shield them from him, basically because he's evading justice all the time. Now, word spread that Ken was at the D&G Tavern with Trina finishing a drink and getting more beer. So the meeting broke up and everyone drifted outside into the main street, and Ken was climbing into his Chevy, lit a cigarette with Trina beside him, and then everything went fucking batshit crazy. Now, from behind him, at least two shooters, possibly more, opened fire on him, shattering the rear window in a hail of glass. Bullets tore into him, a centerfire round exploding through his chest, splintering his ribs, and shredding his lungs, with a .22 rimfire shots to the back of the head, neck, and brain splattered all over the dashboard, skull fragments flying everywhere, and all this lasted about 20 seconds, and all you can hear is Trina screaming, covered in, like, all the husband's gore and shit, bits, like, imagine Jackie Kennedy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Bits of flesh and everything like that all over her. Now, an unnamed man then pulled her to safety and into a nearby bank. Now, the truck's engine was still running, and Ken was slumped over the wheel, like blood coming from everywhere, and nobody called an ambulance. Everyone was peering in, looking at his body, and then walked away and just left him. Now, Trina said it was Dal Clement, who's the part owner of a tavern, who Ken had been victimising, and he said he was one of the shooters.
Yeah.
Now, between 30 and 46 witnesses stood there, but every one of them said, no, I didn't see anything. I didn't see Dal do anything. No. Couldn't see anything. Now, the investigation was essentially a farce from the start. Now, local police come in, followed by the Missouri State Highway Patrol, including Trooper Dan Boyer, who noticed the unbreakable wall of silence from everyone. State investigators and the FBI piled on, covering grand juries and applying federal pressure, but nobody said a word. All the residents repeated like a mantra, I didn't see anything. So the case was officially closed on September the 7th, 1982 as unsolved. basically, many people in Skidmore said his death was justified, saying he needed killing and I'm glad he's dead because justice wasn't working. He was getting off, he was intimidating people, nothing would stick to him. So Ken was then buried at the Memorial Park Cemetery in St. Joseph, Missouri. His grave was a quiet end to a loud, violent life. Now, in the aftermath, Trina filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Skidmore, also against Nottoway County, Sheriff Estes, Mayor Steve Peters, and Del Clement, and was seeking $5 to $6 million in damages. Now, she settled out of court, for $17,000. $17,000.
That's
She wanted $5 to $6 million. She got $17,000, and nobody involved admitted any type of guilt whatsoever. Now, Trina did get remarried, and she moved to Lebanon, Missouri, and she lived a quieter life. Well, I don't think she could have lived a more louder life. Yeah, so she lived a quieter life until she died of cancer on January the 24th, 2012. Now, everybody faded away over time. The lawyer McFadden passed, Bo Bowenkamp died, Del Clement died in 2009, the state trooper was dead, and with them went any real chance of reopening the case and leaving it as one of America's most infamous unsolved murders. Now, Skidmore itself, they always say it never fully recovered. The population dwindled as residents aged or moved away. And it's got a stigma of the town that got away with murder. So basically, if you've ever read, there's a really, really, really good book called In Broad Daylight by Harry N. McLean. And it goes into all the detail with, basically showing the rage and everything. Like this illiterate hog farmer who raped, robbed, and basically burnt his way through his entire life, meeting a collective end. There was a 1991 film adaptation of that as well. There was a really good Sundance TV documentary called No One Saw the Thing from Blumhouse Television. The ones who do all the horror films and shit.
Yeah, when did that go?
That was 2019.
But
that goes into, it goes into everything that goes on in Nottoway County. So, showing community prejudice against outsiders. And there was, other, unsolved crimes, like Wendy Gillenwater being beaten to death, or Branson Perry vanishing in 2001 after being lured to a shed with jumper cables, never to be seen again. Basically, they just show how Skidmore's silence wasn't isolated. It's basically part of a pattern with when it comes to small towns and just closed ranks. But everyone's saying who was it? Was it 1, 2 fires? But basically, some monsters like McElroy don't stop until you make them stop permanently. So Skidmore, the silence of, protected everyone. And they knew that the law wasn't going to work. So the only justice it could do was vigilante justice, which we always say, you shouldn't do that. But when you've got a piece of shit like serial paedophile rapist who's just going around shooting people for small arguments, setting fire to things, and gets away with it because he intimidates everyone, including the police, then what else are you meant to do? What else can you do?
I mean, there's not much else you can do. I mean, I don't particularly see a problem with what they did. It's I think I'd look at it from the other perspective of you fuck around and you find out.
So do you think it was justified, or are you a knobhead and a piece of shit who probably, would say, do you know what? I don't care how many.
Justified. Like,
I don't, you're going to have certain people who are like, I don't care how many times his name appears in the Epstein files, or even if his name appears in there more than Harry Potter's name appears in the Harry Potter books. He's all right. I'm not saying who he is. But thanks, guys. If you like this, remember, please, if you've come this far, watched it this far, you're a fucking trooper. Well done. Subscribe, like, comment. It's the best way to support us. If you do want to, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/Enter the Dark. Join for free or chuck us some shekels. I know times are hard for fucking everyone. This economy, Jesus Christ. But
how expensive is fucking everything? Like, let's just have a moment of solidarity. Like, fucking hell.
Right. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I've been Jan. He's been Les. You take care. See you later.
Have a good one, guys.